What is up, Steeler fans? And it's the second half of the Friday podcast. That means it's time for the Jerome Betz show. I'm just joking. It's the All Betz Are Off segment. What's up, Jeremy? How's it going?
It's going good. I thought you were changing up the title, though, so I was confused there for a second.
No. I would never change that. All bets are off for sure.
That's right.
Let's talk about this upcoming game, but I always like to ask you a little bit about last week before we move forward. You know, the Steelers win, and I'm going to ask you the question I posed to a lot of listeners on Monday. And I don't know if you listened to Monday's show, and that is, does it matter how they win? So a lot of fans are like, oh, no, it doesn't matter. I just want to win. Okay, don't complain then. But there's a lot of people that also say, you know, it does matter. Where do you stand on that debate?
Yeah, I think it does. It does matter how they win because of the expectation that's on the team. And the fact of the matter is you're not going to go into week 16, Christmas night against the Kansas City Chiefs in Acrisure Stadium and beat them playing like you did against Denver in week 2. You're not going to roll into the playoffs as a wild card team and go to Buffalo and beat Josh Allen playing like you did in week 2, week 1 of the regular season. So, okay, you're getting wins. It's great. You're in the development process, right? That's also true here in this situation. It is not a finished product. So I can sit back and be happy with 2-0 and also recognize that maybe the performances that got us to 2-0 aren't good enough to get us to 3-0 or aren't good enough to get us to 4-0. And I think that that's the disconnect in Steeler Nation right now between some of the fans is that some are just like, okay, let's just move on. We've got 2 wins and we'll figure it out. Well, got to figure it out quick because the expectation for this team is not just to win in the regular season. It's beyond that. It's to be a legitimate contender in the AFC. And if you want to do that, you're going to have to play better football, cleaner football on both sides of the ball, but especially on the side that's been kind of the Achilles heel for the Steelers the last few years. That's the offensive side of the football.
So, yeah, this is an interesting topic to discuss because everyone stands on a different part of this. But I think about the Steelers, and I think that, you know, one thing, I'll plug this article. It's going to run today, Friday. It's a new feature. I just thought of it. I'm reading Myron Cope's biography. He's a very creative writer. Yeah. And people forget that he was a writer before he became a radio personality and then a TV personality. And I call it The Jig Is Up. Now, if you know the song Renegade by Styx, that's one of their lyrics is The Jig Is Up. And it's just going to be my random thoughts over the week. And so go check it out at steelcurtainnetwork.com. But one of the things I want to talk about and I want to ask you is I have an issue with people calling Justin Fields the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Because, yes, technically, on the depth chart, he's the backup quarterback. The dude got the majority of the starting snaps in the training camp preseason process, and he started every snap so far this season.
Yeah.
So while technically he's the backup, I'm not about to give kudos to anyone because, well, they won 2 games on the road with their backup quarterback. Come on, this is a first-round draft pick. Like, what are we talking about? You agree with me on that? Because when I hear that, I'm like, that's kind of cringeworthy. He's not a backup. The dude could be the starter. I think maybe he could. We'll get to that. But still, you agree? Do you see that the way I do?
I 100% do. Talking about him as anything other than a viable starter for this team is putting yourself in a bad spot as somebody who's making comments about football. I think you're wrong to do that because he's legitimately. This was legitimately a question all offseason is can Justin Fields overtake Russ and his pole position, quote unquote. And I think the whole time Mike Tomlin has said it also that they feel comfortable with either guy. If they have to start either guy, they feel comfortable doing so. And so this was always just about numbers on a depth chart, not really who was better than the other, in my opinion. And I don't think you're sitting back here saying, well, you feel good about the Steelers going into 2 road stadiums and winning with their backup quarterback. That's kind of an asinine comment, in my opinion.
You can give kudos to winning 2 games on the road because that's not easy against any opponent. But
right.
To say they did it with a backup quarterback, I just feel like it cheapens everything. And again, this guy has started a lot of football games in his young career. I mean, he was only on the bench behind Andy Dalton for like a couple weeks in Chicago before he was inserted in the starting lineup. But I digress. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. It's going to be Justin Fields again. I'm going to ask you a question, and I think I'm not sure if it was your show, the Steelers Fix this week or not, but one show they asked, what would the stat line have to look like for you to say, okay, he's the guy now? What would that have to look like in week 3 against the Chargers?
Yeah, I wrote an article about that actually last week that ran before the game. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So I had basically listed out what he needed to do over the next 2 weeks to lock himself in as the undisputed starter for the team. And to be honest, the first go at it was not enough. But I think statistically in this game, I need to see some semblance of a passing attack that can actually get rolling and where he's making good decisions when he throws the ball, not just in not making turnovers, not creating poor plays, but also seeing the open guy in the middle of the field and hitting it, not just going straight to the legs and scrambling. And I'm not going to fault him for doing that. That's, part of his game. That's part of what he's good at. But teams will start to get latched onto you, and you're giving up bigger plays, bigger potential down the field when you give up George Pickens winning quick on a slant route that's going to go for 16 yards instead of your 5-6 yard scramble because you have to break the pocket when you've got time to make that read. Just turn the ball loose a little bit. We saw it as a college athlete that he was willing to turn the ball loose over the middle of the field. I don't know what it is about the NFL where he's not willing to do that anymore, but even when it's there, even when it's schemed up to be there, there is some hesitation there. So I think stat-wise, I need to see 200-plus yards passing, in my opinion. I need to see another solid day on the ground. I put that he needed to have 75 yards rushing over the course of week 2 and week 3. I think he had 39 in week 2. So he's right on track for that. So I would say that that's fine. But as far as the passing stats go, we need more touchdowns. We need some semblance of consistent passing production through the air for him to maintain the starter. Because if all he can do is provide less than what you would expect from Russell Wilson as a passer and the addition of his legs, I don't think that's enough to keep Russell Wilson off the field. He needs to be able to do at least what Russ does as a passer and then add in the element of his legs that Russ just doesn't have at this stage of his career.
Okay, so before we go to our AFC North picks, I want to ask you, so there's been all these plays in the last 2 weeks that have been negated by penalty. And whether it's a holding call, whether some are bogus, offensive pass interference is another one. The pick play, which would have been a touchdown to George Pickens in Denver. When you think about it, you say like you're looking at stat lines. Well, that's not going to be included. But does that weigh in your opinion, to the decision when you see him scramble right? The guy that Broderick Jones supposedly held wasn't going to touch him anyways.
Right.
Rifles a freaking bullet 50 yards downfield to George Pickens over his shoulder. Does that weigh in, even though it doesn't count?
To me, it does, because you see it there, and it's not a direct result of his issue. Now, there has to be a chance or the ability for the Steelers to show that they can play as a unit together with him on the field, right? And not make those mistakes. Not directly linking it back to him necessarily, but if there's too much going on, if the offensive line is struggling to figure out how to hold blocks and how to maneuver the pocket with Justin Fields' special talents back there, that can also pose a problem, not just for opposing defenses if it's working, but for the offense if it's not. So there has to be some cohesion, some just them coming together and looking smoother, I guess is what I'm trying to say overall as a group. But yeah, I take that into account. That laser, Russell Wilson's not making that throw at this stage of his career. Now he might complete the pass, but it's going to be an arcing ball. It's not going to be on the move like that. There's just the ceiling with Justin Fields is obviously higher because of the physical talent, but can the consistency match what you were hoping to get out of Russ? I think that's been the biggest contributing factor to what the Steelers are looking for here. And honestly, they're scheming him up to be that way. My thought, though, is at some point you're going to have to let him loose. At some point you're going to have to let him make the mistake. Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills, they don't care if Josh Allen throws 2 picks in a game. because they know that he's going to provide them with so much more passing and running. That's the kind of play that they're going to need to get out of Fields eventually for them to, number one, believe that he's the guy, and number two, get where they want to as a team, which is winning championships or being in contention for it.
I'm going to be honest, and I'll get your quick thoughts on this. I watched Monday Night Football. The Atlanta Falcons come back and beat the Eagles. That's neither here nor there. And I watched Jalen Hurts. And I'm watching this, and I said to myself,
yeah,
what the hell's the difference between Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields? And I put this on social media, and I had a lot of good responses, too. I said, is it all about the team? Is it about the organization? Is it about the offense and how they handle them? I don't see a lot of differences between these two quarterbacks yet. When you're talking about narratives, you got Jalen Hurts, who has been to a Super Bowl, mind you. And I know that I'm not cheapening that, but he's also been set up better. And you have Justin Fields down here. And it's like, well, I don't understand where this great distance is between these two guys. And maybe Jalen Hurts is a little bit more accurate. I do think Philadelphia trusts him a lot more too. And I think they design runs for him way better. Do you see it that way? Like, do you agree with me?
Yeah, especially talent-wise and what they're willing and not willing to do as a player. Jalen Hurts isn't one to toss missiles over the middle of the field either at tightly covered receivers. And he's kind of a see it, throw it type player, just like you would describe Justin Fields. There's not a lot of anticipatory play in how they play the game. It's very much, do I see an open guy? Let me throw the ball to him now. For the difference that I see that is just that, number one, like you said, Jalen Hurts has been surrounded by a better team for the majority of his career than Fields has. And I think the decision-making inherently has been better for Jalen Hurts than it had been for Fields in Chicago. The ability to trust what he's going to do with his arm, to trust the accuracy, to trust the players down the field. But a lot of that, to me, Jeff, also goes back to coaching philosophy. And if there's anything we know about Mike Tomlin, is he coaches for his defense to win the game. And that's the way it has been. And my argument is that is the antithesis of what Mike Tomlin talks about. He says we're not going to live in our fears. But to me, it's the scared way to play football when you have a talented quarterback like this, is to say to him, well, hey, just please don't mess it up for the defense and let the defense go out there and win that. Maybe you do that the first 2 weeks, but at some point it has to change. Let's make it this week. Let's go out and beat the butts off the Chargers. Let's do it.
All right. I agree. Let's talk about AFC North picks. Let's go to Giants and Browns. Browns are hosting the New York Giants. The Giants are 0-2. They did put up a fight last week, but it wasn't very much. They're just bad. And Cleveland got their first win last week against Jacksonville. I foresee the Browns winning at home. Do you agree?
I do. One interesting thing about the Giants last week is the Washington Commanders in that game, they scored on every single drive that they had on offense, but every single one of them was a field goal. So this is a good red zone defense, but they're not good between the 20s. And the Browns, to me, found a little bit of something last week. I think they're going to continue to improve. And this Giants team is no match right now.
Yeah. And the Browns are giving 6.5, and I say take the Browns giving the points.
I agree.
All right, let's go to the next game, and that would be the Ravens and Cowboys at 4:25 on Sunday. This is in Dallas. Interesting game here with a lot of different, caveats in terms of the Baltimore Ravens being 0-2, losing to the Raiders last week. The Cowboys getting their doors blown off by the Saints.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys at home are actually getting a point. That was a shocking spread to me.
Yes.
That's kind of disrespectful to the Dallas Cowboys playing at home. How do you see this game going? This is a tough one to pick.
This is real tough, but I just don't see the Ravens going to 0-3. This is kind of what the guys from the old Around the NFL podcast would call the cornered animal game. They're 0-2. They're a good team, and they're just not going to go 0-3. I'm picking the Ravens, and the spread is weird because, you have the Cowboys as the home dog. So I don't know if I'm touching this one from a betting perspective. As far as the spread goes, that's a little strange, but as far as who wins outright, if I'm taking money line here, I'm taking the Ravens. I think they win it. And I think it's going to be a close game, but I just don't think the Ravens go to 0-3. I'll be ecstatic if they do, but I don't see it happening.
I think Dallas wins. I think Dallas
I
got
like it.
smacked in the face last week at home. It was embarrassing. I think that the Ravens offensive line is really bad.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry is doing nothing. And they only have Zay Flowers right now. I mean, yeah, they use Isaiah Likely a lot in week 1. Mark Andrews has been missing in action for the last 2 weeks. Unless they just start getting these guys involved, it's going to be an uphill battle. And I think Dallas does have enough firepower to also move the ball on, I think, a very overrated Ravens defense. Maybe
that's a great, that's a great Cowboys pass rush too. It could really give the Ravens O-line fits. Yeah.
Maybe it's me just having wishful thinking. I don't know. All right, let's go to, there's a doubleheader on Monday night, 2 crappy games, Jaguars, Bills, and then Commanders and Bengals. Commanders and Bengals is at 8:15. Jags, Bills is at 7:30. Why the NFL does this, I have no idea. But still, the Bengals are at home. They're hosting the 1-1 Commanders, and they are spotting Washington 7. What do you think?
Man, I picked the Bengals last week, or excuse me, I picked the Bengals in week 1 to blow out the Patriots, and that did not happen. They ended up losing, right? So I'm done with the Bengals winning by big margins, but I do think they win this game. Washington presents an interesting challenge offensively because of Jaden Daniels' rushing ability, because of his unorthodox play style as well. He's very Lamar Jackson-like in his play style, the way he reads the field, the way he gets out in space. He just doesn't take care of his body quite as well as Lamar Jackson does when he's out in space. So, but I just think the Bengals found a little bit of something against the Chiefs. I think they're, again, cornered animal, 0-2. They're going to win this game. They're going to reestablish themselves. Steelers better do some winning and keep up the winning, because some of these teams behind them, I think, are going to get it together a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I would not take the Bengals to cover, but I will take them to win on prime time at home. So let's talk about the game everyone cares about. Steelers, Chargers, 1:00 kickoff here at Acrisure Stadium, the Steelers home opener. The Steelers are spotting 1.5. So they're not even getting the home 3-point spread. That tells you that the books are kind of leaning to the LA Chargers, but with Justin Herbert's ankle, who knows what that's going to look like. The over-under is 36. What do you think? What's your prediction?
Man, I'm taking the under for sure. What was the spread again?
1.5 Steelers.
1.5 to the Steelers. Yeah.
No, 1.5 to the Chargers.
That's right. 1.5 to the Chargers. This one's tough. All week I was like, I'm going to pick the Chargers. All week I was like, this is the game that the Steelers wake up and say, okay, we can't play conservative anymore. We've got to step forward and not play within our fears anymore. We got to step out of that. But the more the week progresses and you're getting Roman Wilson back, it looks like healthy for the Steelers. This defense is still flying around. They haven't been challenged like they will be by a running game like this. But I think that they're up to it. And I mentioned that the linebacker group is going to be key this year for the Steelers because it's been revamped and they've got speed and power back there now. All pro type guys that can make plays. That's the matchup key for me, is these linebackers against the running backs getting to the second level. Can they make sure tackles? Can they keep the breakout runs from happening? Keep J.K. Dobbins and Co. in check. I think they do it enough to eke out a win. And I think that it's going to be real close. I'm going to take the Steelers against the spread here as well, but I think it's a 3-point game. I've got the Steelers winning 17-14 against the Chargers in week 3 to go to 3-0 and keep the pedal to the metal here a little bit.
So I think there's going to be a little bit more scoring in this game than people think. I'm taking the over barely.
Okay.
But I don't think the Chargers defense is as good as even Denver's last week. They don't have the corners that the Chargers don't have the corners the Denver Broncos had. I think they do have a good front, and I think they do have a good pass rushers with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, although Joey Bosa is banged up right now. I think the Steelers could move the ball on this team. I really do. And I think that the Chargers are also going to run the ball on the Steelers. I think the Steelers are just going to, it's going to be like those old school Ravens games where they're going to run it and they're going to be successful. But I like the Steelers to win this game 20-17.
Okay.
20-17. So no, it's not a huge offensive outburst, but the over under is 36. I've barely got the over at 20-17. So that's where I'm going to go. So we'll see.
I think it's going to be it's going to be like an old school game. I think you're going to have a lot of Steelers Ravens vibes in this game. Kind of a bloodbath on defense for both teams. They're going to be beating each other up. Who can establish the run and be more physical? But I'm going to bank a little bit on this Arthur Smith talk that there is a what was the term he used that that there's a breakout coming, or
the dam is ready to break.
Yeah, the dam is ready to break. That I'm going to rely on that a little bit. I think he knows his team. I think he's got a good scheme in place for this Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think that they can give right back to the Chargers what the Chargers want to dish out to them. This is a good matchup.
There you go. Good just stuff. All right. I want to tell everyone your power rankings are going to be on the website today, steelcurtainnetwork.com. So make sure you check that out. And what else do you have cooking? Anything?
Yeah, I'm gonna write an article kind of about the balance between the positive vibes of going 2-0 and also some of the concerns, kind of piggybacking on what the Steelers Fix podcast was that ran Thursday. So go check that out if you haven't listened to that yet. Draft Dynasty podcast comes out today as well. And then if you missed the Q&A live last night, go check it out on audio, and be sure to tune in live after the preview this coming week as well. Stay tuned for all of that.
All right, Jeremy, as always, man, thanks for your time. Enjoy the game.
Thanks, Jeff. You too.
See ya.